All right, looks like we're live again. Thanks everybody for coming in. This week, Jim and I figured, I mean, we did a little research, but a lot of what's been going on has going to require some more research. So we're just going to like bring up some topics, shoot the breeze, have a good time. Probably not going to be a big, long, epic 2 hour thing or anything. But anyways, just something that we talked about, Jim, was kind of like a difference between different styles of music. And part of that discussion was about what metal is. And there's like a philosophy of evil within metal. And what that means, how that separates it from the herd, you know?
Well, you break it down to its one of its definitions is that evil is in direct opposition to good.
Right.
Well, then look at good's track record. What has all been done in the name of righteousness here? Wars, genocide, rape, mass slaughter, all done there. So if you look at it from that perspective, perhaps being the villain is the better of two evils here.
Right. It can certainly be looked at that way, but I think I like to come from more of a objective point of view. Like I've heard people say that before, and it's an interesting, opposite way to look at things. Like from the status quo of godly Paragonian kind of outlook, like mainstream PC culture nowadays. But I just want to know what the truth is, right? Like the side it comes from doesn't necessarily mean as much as the integrity of the information, I guess you would say.
Well, this all really has to deal with the way things get propagandized and shit.
Right. So both sides could do that, like.
Oh yeah, and of course, as you go through the different genres of metal and you look at the different varying degrees of, what they claim evil is, and why there's such a fascination with it, you go down the line and you start running into pretty much the same problem where people actually condone those kinds of actions.
Well, yeah,
Just because they want to reject society so bad, because society is so pent up and trying to be this, happy facade, but here's the crap behind us. We're just going to try to paint over it, even though it's still going to stink like shit, versus
right.
people saying, well, I am the shit. I am the defecation of the universe. Let's do this.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that before. Especially, I don't remember which one specifically. There was two documentaries on black metal, and one of them had this guy who was seriously all about like being destructive and hurting others. He was all about it, and I was like, well, at least he's honest, but I disagree with him.
Well,
so it's definitely there.
There's also a thing where one of my friends is really big into theological Satanism stuff, and what she preaches is pretty much what some would refer to as the Fred Rogers school of Satanism.
Who's Fred Rogers?
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Yeah. Pretty much, it's pretty much just different philosophy coming from everything, where Satan is the key to personal enlightenment, and you use that enlightenment to make a better society as opposed to the way God's destroying it, which
right,
is
so.
That's pretty much what I gained from it. There's a lot more into it.
It's crazy to think about
it. That's pretty much what I've gathered.
Right. And I was going to add that Catholics and Christians view that as God is justified in doing all that. Like, these are evil people, right? These are scumbags. God's only killing the scumbags, right? So it's like this big massacre done in the name of all that is holy and good. Whereas Satanists seem to want to preserve life in some meaningful way.
Well, that's one group. That's probably multiple groups of Satanists, at least. Like I said, my one friend. I mean, we've only touched on it probably a few dozen times, and whenever we have, sometimes it's gotten into depth. But that is definitely one school that I've seen. The other school that I've seen, mostly floating around online, is the one where they pretty much say if you associate with a Satanist, you're risking your very own life. Pretty much going back to what you were saying about just people saying, I'm going to be wanton violence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's evidence that people are. It's not just a fashion statement for some people. I mean, you look at that art performance, "Kill Me" or "Stop Me Before I Kill Myself." I can't remember the exact name of it, but I mean, he was all about it. I mean, there's no denying that this guy is all about violence, but I mean, he's honest about it. So he's just trying to say it through art, So it's definitely not just a thing to some people. They take it literally.
Oh yeah, but hell, I forgot my point there.
Sorry, brother.
That's okay.
But yeah,
My
I mean,
computer died. I had a bunch of notes on this crap.
well, yeah, unforeseen circumstances. That's like kind of why we're just gonna. This probably be a shorter episode, and just kind of maybe set up for next week. A lot of this also, like I said, was about how do you define different styles of music, and of course, tackling heavy metal. You have to kind of look where it came from, what, like the proto versions of metal, and then you find out that it's probably rock is the closest cousin, and where that came from, and it all. So, anyways, the point is, we want to help draw the lines a little bit more clearly about what specifically about what metal is and what rock is. It's just the closest thing that you can come to metal. So rock, I think, is a good one to kind of contrast and compare to. So, Jim, old school metal, Black Sabbath, and proto metal bands came from rock, and rock came from kind of bluesy kind of stuff. So like that's all intertwined. But what made it metal? Like what was the push to rock that turned it into metal? Was it Black Sabbath or was it something else?
Pretty much it was the philosophy to go in contrast to the huge rock motions of the time, which were being adopted from hippie movements and shit, the peace, love, dope, and just, fart yourself to better freedom and happiness state. And they wanted to go into contrast with that and inject maybe a little bit of reality as to what's going on. And if you actually go back and look at the hippie movements of the 60s, they're all preaching peace, love, dope, acceptance, and all this shit. Yet they're spitting in people's faces and, desecrate, desecrating whatever they could get their hands on that was symbolic of the system or whatever. I mean, they were a pretty fucked up bunch. I mean, they were definitely hypocritical to the extreme there. Where it's like, I'm all about pacifism, but I'll punch this soldier in the face because he's a fucking baby killer, and I have no idea what the hell the war was, so I dodged the draft.
Yeah, yeah, definitely becomes. They might have the right motivations, but it turns into this.
Well, they have the right lingo is probably more of a way to phrase it, because most people want peace. They enjoy being loved and all that. So it is the right lingo, but they are not applying it as such.
No, they're not living by the virtue of their words.
I mean, we could go back to the earlier topic a little bit here and look at the opposite here. And if you actually go through three of the Gospels, John, Luke, and no, not John. It was Luke, Mark, and Matthew, those three Gospels, and try to look at that depiction of Jesus. He was more trying to say, peace, love, dope, and all that shit. And he actually, according to that those Gospels, he actually tried going through with it, and followed to his logical conclusion where he's fucking executed.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically it's a religion of self-mutilation,
Well, it's more like just following his own teachings in extreme. Love thy enemy. That's a pretty deep commandment there,
Yeah, I don't think I can do that.
No, not many people can. But he was following that to his logical conclusion by letting people kill him without putting up much, if any, resistance. I mean, this is all biblical accounts, so it's going to be skewed. So you don't know
So
exactly.
I guess my perspective, if you're a Christian out there, from my perspective, it's like, Jesus, really, dude, like, you don't have to do this. You can live and protect other people's lives as well without being ridiculous about it. You don't have to let these people murder you. I mean,
You
it's
look
just
at
not pragmatic.
you look at the contrast here, where Catholicism in its early days, first 1,000 or so years. Hello, am I still on?
Yeah, you're on, man.
Okay, I have no idea how my screen there, but yeah, first 1,000+ years there, 2,000 years almost. It was more than willing to look at that message, say this is the literal word of God. This is literally how everything happened. And guess what? We're going to declare war and fucking do all this really oppressive, mean shit to people in the name of this guy that fucking just said, I love you, kill me.
Wouldn't it be nice if the authoritarians actually had a religion that matched their actions? So, if it needs to be Satanism, at least the decor would be proper,
Well, all schools of Satanism, even the one that's just pretty much like atheism, it is atheism. They just call themselves Satanists because they want to reject God, the concept of deity that much. And I see it more of a trendy thing, but even they
That is trendy to
tend to
me.
agree that the concept of Satan is one which is supposed to invoke personal freedom, which is completely anti-authoritarian.
At the same time, though, I mean, isn't Satan an authoritarian? Like, he rules over you in hell. Like,
There's
you know what I'm saying?
I'd have
Like,
to actually break out some of the shit that I had to actually explore that, and there is a lot about like just going out and doing it. I mean, fuck, it's been years since I read it, but one of the many grimoires floating around about Satanism was all about, let's, cherish war, famine, and disease.
okay.
He actually breaks down the verse structures and shit. It wasn't too dissimilar from the Bible
Right, so it's
in
like
certain
another
regards,
religion.
where it's like God says, the Bible says that God says, let's make this war and loot their lands, take their women and shit. And, that thing was just saying pretty much the same thing, but instead of doing it for God, you're doing it for Satan.
Right. That's kind of how I look at it. I guess the outcomes are the same, but the labels and feelings and emotions and the art that comes out of each religion is a lot different. They both do the same thing, though. I don't believe
Yeah.
either one of them exist at all, so I don't follow either of them. But I will say that the satanic kind of artwork really fits a certain type of art that you can put out there, and heavy metal is definitely one of them. Like it's a perfect motif for heavy metal.
Well, this all goes back to trying to inject a bit of realism here, into the scene of the time, and you look at the contrast here. When metal used more of a horror motif, whereas rock at the time was trying to make all pleasant sounds.
Yeah, like in rock, you think of like fucking angels and fucking enlightenment and all that hippie shit. Get around the campfire and tell camp stories kind of feeling. Whereas, like when the Black Sabbath song when it first came out, I mean that kind of set the tone for this kind of creepy things are lurking all around you kind of vibe around heavy metal, and I love that. I love that contrast there, and it's an important contrast because it's something that can't be lost. Otherwise, metal will no longer be metal. It will just be rock with kind of metal flavoring to it.
I mean, even go back before Sabbath, there were the Doors, which were considered an apocalyptic rock band. And even though they did some of their stuff light and fluffy, a lot of it was pretty dark as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I have to listen to some more Doors. I never really liked them, but I never hated them either. I just never got into it. I think I would, be kind of considering the kind of rock and roll I like. But I like bands like King Crimson. Yes, is a good rock band because, like you said, it's supposed to be about like painting a pretty picture. And Yes is that band. They paint glorious fucking pretty pictures with their songs versus Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, where it's just a huge stark contrast, and that's what you can point to say this is heavy metal and this is rock and roll. And I think a lot of
Speaking of Maiden, we could dip into a bit of the 80s. I mean, just look at the stuff that was going on in the 80s. Like, what the hell was her name? Ah, fuck, I forget their names.
well, was it a band?
It was, fuck. I can't even remember at the moment.
All right. But as time went,
But you look at, well, anyways, you just look at the majority of the 80s bands, it was all like, just happy bullshit or trying to look at romance. And then you look at the metal scene, and that's where you start seeing stuff like, people trying to look at history and different shit, trying to look at it from different angles, as opposed to just reciting the same old fluff that, all the rock musicians were doing.
right? Rock being more hold hands, everybody get along. Metal being more, no, look at this conflict here. Always pointing to some kind of problem that needs to be solved. And I love that feeling in metal that it's going towards something. Rock has the same feeling, but it's in a completely opposite direction.
Yeah, pretty much.
But also, is it enough to say that the feeling it gives you is enough to really make the difference between rock and metal, or is it also the composition of the music? I'd say it is. It's also
the
different.
composition of the music's definitely very different.
Right.
I mean, even with your stuff that tries to go completely like pseudo metal here these days, trying to add that flavor in, there's just that passion missing. There's like that element of trying to provoke someone into a state where they would be willing to consider something.
Right. I think rock, it has the same, it's hard to describe. It's got the same maybe motivation behind it, but there's a cutoff where
I really wouldn't say it's got the same motivation. Most of your rock is just let's get popular kind of motivation. And then, you'll get people actually trying to write something from their own point of view, but they're trying to reflect more of the sugar coating side of life, I call it. Even whenever they even when they try to play with the dark things, they're trying to bring it up in the darker aspects in a positive enough light that people will just be attracted to it like flies.
Well, that's what rock does. That's what I'm trying to say. It can't be rock anymore once it gets past a certain. It's meant to take a really ugly truth and spin bullshit around it so that it's inspiring somehow. Which is, it's just what it is. But when you stop doing that and you do break that plane, that limit that rock won't go over, that's when it starts to become metal. And it just can go so far in that direction. And we see it evolve as like the bluesy kind of sound, bluesy jazzy kind of sound of the early metal starts fading away into like just really crunchy, hardcore, like metal, of the late
Well,
80s, 90s.
well, you look at the trends in rock now. They're trying to go the crunchy, grindy feel. They miss out on like the actual intricacies that make things work within metal and actually make it a driving force in instigating that war inside the brain or instigating that thought. Um, Hell, borrow from a video game example I heard. There was a bunch of cover bands claiming that they are making a metal version of a song. One of the ones I heard was a track called Riddle from Castlevania 3. And you listen to these covers, and it just sounds like heavily distorted rock. And you listen to the actual original 8-bit version, and you hear the one thing that they're missing, which is essentially just a bunch of scales going in the background. And to me, that kind of makes the 8-bit version, more metal than what these covers are trying to claim they are.
Because it has like a background atmosphere to it as well, not on top of the like main rhythms. And is
Yeah,
that
the
what you're
main
saying?
rhythms and stuff, they're cool and all, but it's that background scaling that kind of sense a part of urgency behind it
Right.
and throws something into it that makes the whole thing congeal. Where these guys just focus on the main rhythms and shit, and they totally just don't get it by the sounds of it. They're, like I said, it just sounds more rock based because they're not really trying to make everything congeal into an actual metal piece.
Right. So it's really important for artists going forward to be careful with that word metal, right? I mean, metal is something, and you can't just pick up guitar and drums and stuff and start playing and call it metal.
Yeah.
I mean, I like rock and roll. I mean, it's just I'm not going to be one of these idiots who claims that the hard aggressive rock that I like is metal. There's a difference between the two, and that's what I think is being confused here. Is almost anything can be metal nowadays, and it's like, what? No, it's just not the way it works. It shouldn't work anyways, like that. Like one band I like a lot is Dream Theater, and they use metal, but it's still essentially rock because they always tell a story of like redemption or something like that. Like they usually have like a positive kind of vibe to their songs, even if they go really crazy metal for half the song. It's still not exactly metal because it, it won't go past a certain point where it's just coming after your throat. You know,
Honestly, it's been ages since I listened to Dream Theater, but I always consider them more on the orchestrated side of things as opposed to like hardcore. And I think that's,
yeah, they come from a very music theory, music academia kind of background, right? You're getting more orchestral kind of music out of it. But it's the reason I call it more rock than metal is even if they do play like metal sounds, the overall point of the song is usually uplifting. Whereas if it were metal, it would be the true, like more visceral, more get off your ass and get shit done kind of feeling to it. Whereas Dream Theater is like heads in the clouds kind of music. I don't know.
I don't know, there has been some uplifting stuff within metal. I just can't think of it at the moment, but it's not really the central theme here.
Which is,
More, like I was saying, to provoke the brain into thinking.
well, I mean, can't rock do that though too? Like, is it a certain way of thinking that metal
I would have,
causes?
oh God. Hold on a second, let me get a drink for this energy drink.
All right.
I would have to say the one thing that rock tends to miss out on is that really misses out on, even the stuff that does provoke a little bit of thought here and there, is the fact that it always tries to look outward, as if to call out, scream out at the world that is the problem, whenever it tries to provoke those kinds of thoughts. And that's where you'll see a lot of the political shit come in, going one way or another, without them ever asking themselves, am I actually part of the problem? Whereas metal tries to make you look inward, and the good shit makes you look inward, definitely, and makes you realize, where do you stand in life? And are you part of your own problems here?
So metal would preach more individualistic ideals rather than, hey, everybody, let's get along here. It's more about personal integrity than group integrity.
Yeah, that's one part of it, yeah.
Okay. I still think metal, for me, for my money, and I know there's people who like more uplifting styles of metal, but for me, I always think of metal as the undercurrent of everything that's going on, like the stuff nobody wants to really talk about, but metal will address it anyways, whether you like it or not. Like that to me seems like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. That kind of vibe that I have in metal, that I feel from heavy metal. It's like, yeah, I know you guys are uncomfortable with this, but we need to talk about it anyways. And you're a piece of shit if you don't. If you want to run away from everything.
Well, punk used to do a pretty good job of that too, but so much of it's just been fucking flooded, because punk's just way too easy to play. I mean, I could probably pick up my bass right now and within an hour probably work out a punk song if I actually sat there and thought about it enough, put forth the effort.
Yeah, I never really got into punk. I mean, I'm sure it's been incorporated into some music that I like, but I'll never be a punk fan,
And once again, we're back to the intricacies thing here, which is part of what makes metal a little bit more difficult to play. In contrast to that, because there's different techniques you got to utilize, and
so yeah, like you can hear that, and especially early metal, where it's like you can definitely see this new thing happen, and you can hear it in the play, like the actual playing, like nobody's really played music like this before, so it kind of has this kind of air of imperfection to it, and I like it. It makes it, like, almost makes the music what it is in that early Black Sabbath kind of era. I love that feeling. It's definitely a newer way of playing those same instruments that rock and metal share, which is guitar, bass, drums, singer, kind of setup. But I just always point to that opening riff on that Black Sabbath album, that creepy, like intimidating kind of presence about it. That really kind of oozes metal to me. Whereas rock has more of that everything's going to be okay kind of vibe to it. And I like both of them. I think they're both good. But I think there needs to be that division made for people so that the genres can kind of do their own thing without having to constantly pander to each other,
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I'm like kind of lackadaisical at the moment and far from focused.
All right, man. Well, maybe we should just set up next week where we can have more notes and sources to point to and things. Also, maybe talk about the riots that happened, MetalGate, all of that stuff. I mean, I could actually talk about MetalGate a little bit if you're interested. I mean,
All right, go for it.
I mean, what happened there is MRAs dared to question feminist. You know, I'm not a member of either group at all, but one of them decided to use government force to silence the other one. I mean, it's obvious.
Well, it wasn't government force.
Didn't they call the police on him?
No. It was security staff at the venue that pulled him at the request of the expo. And the whole drama there is, well, honestly, a lot of it does reek of bullshit. But whenever you look at it, it pretty much boils down to the guys running the expo said, you know, which is going to cause us more damage, pissing off a bunch of MRAs or pissing off a bunch of feminists. And they decided pissing off feminists would cause them more damage, so out went the MRAs.
Okay, so like the feminists are having more.
At least that's what it all looks like to me. I mean, I don't really see it as some giant conspiracy. I see it more of as a business decision. And the whole court case that's that looks like might be pending because they start the Badgers start up a legal fund.
Yeah.
So that's probably going to be pending if they get enough for it.
I'm all for that. Go for that. Absolutely.
Is whether or not they actually violated the parts of the contract where the expo said they did, thus causing them to get kicked out.
Right. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that should be an issue for the courts. I mean, definitely.
I mean, the whole thing that really triggered it was a woman said that women shouldn't play the victims, and that's at least the argument I've seen, and I heard that part of the thing where they got.
Well, it was women shouldn't be victims, and also that men can be victims. You know, just bringing that up as a possibility offended this panel so much that they said that they were being harassed.
Escort them out and kick them off the grounds.
And like I said, I'm not a member of each of them, but I see one side with this ability to call the, I'll say the cops, just because they got, they actually did get called out on because they were in a park having like a picnic kind of thing, and the cops showed up on them. But anyways, one side kicking the other one out over what even, to me, isn't even a disagreement. I mean, she basically echoes a lot of the things feminists say about equality or whatever, that men and women should be equal. And she gets kicked out for it, not because of what she said, but who said it. And for what reasons. You know, that's what's bullshit to me about it. So they can't even have the discussion. They're dangerous to me. And they still maintain this air of being oppressed in the overall narrative, if you will. That's pretty impressive, crazy shit right there. It's like they're dominating through politeness. You know, it's creepy.
It just all reeks of fucking bullshit.
It does.
It does. I mean, you just don't want your statements to be challenged at all. Which, yeah. You know, I fucking openly welcome people call me out on my bullshit because, you know, there are times where I fucking talk without having my brain engaged.
Absolutely, me too. I mean, and you should be willing to fucking adjust to that kind of shit. I mean, you're just a fucking person. Right? You're not going to be right all the time.
And when it comes down to, like, you know, the political bullshit like this is, I mean, the debate is actually 100% necessary, and shutting that down doesn't accomplish anything.
That's what's dangerous.
I mean, you either prove your side is right, your side is wrong, or there's a middle ground that needs to be reached somewhere, and exactly where that lies, you know, you can only really find that out through debate, and just shutting down the debate's just bullshit.
Oh, absolutely. And anybody who just wants to ignore this, I mean, this isn't about comics and metal, and I mean, it's definitely, they came after our living room and people stood up. That's what the hashtags are all about. But these people can't handle like an objective review of their stances and a communication of that. They can't handle.
Hello? Hello? I think he has died.
I hear you, man.
Oh, you hear me? Well, I didn't hear you.
Okay. Well, fuck you, Google. Everything was good on my end. Anyways, yeah, these people want to control all these little narratives, and they want to silence anybody who gets in their way. And they have no shame in doing so. I mean, they just do it, and you look at it after the fact, and they're just as obnoxious, just as arrogant as they were when they pulled off their little political stunt.
It all just seems to me that they're so insecure in the points they want to make, and probably, and if you go down and try to look at them deep down inside, though, if they were to look deep down inside, they'd see that it's because all they're doing is spouting rhetoric without actually having the facts to back it.
Right.
Or even if the facts exist to back it, they don't actually know the facts to back what they're saying. They're just instinctually going off of it.
Right. I mean, we're being rhetorical here. I mean, we're just shooting the breeze, but we're not sitting here telling you that we're going to silence you for disagreeing or fucking that we're right and you're just wrong. No, we're.
Yeah. Hello? Oh, it's happening again. Isn't that beautiful?
Disagree with and the cops get called. It's fucking ridiculous. And I hope that they get fucking punished for it.
Okay, you faded out mid rant there and came back with the end of it.
That shit, dude. Guess you just have to listen over again. Well, I mean, we don't have really much more to talk about, so this is going to be a short and sweet one. We'll definitely have more prepared for next week. Just didn't want to fucking leave everyone hanging out there for a week without telling anybody. So, Jim, unless you have anything else, we can go ahead and call it.
No, just insane ramblings going on in my head right now.
Yeah, same here. I'm just rambling on and on. So that's not very productive of us. So apologize for the lackluster show. But hey, we'll be back. Have a good one, man.
All right. Catch you later.
Later.